Following the death of his mother, as Anakin was overcome with rage and wanted vengeance against the Tusken Raiders on Tatooine, the voice of Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn called out to Anakin, imploring him to deny the rage and not go through with the attack. As the Episode 2 novelization explains, Qui-Gon's voice was heard not just by Anakin, but also by Yoda, who was meditating upon Coruscant. There's no question that Qui-Gon knew about these actions taken by Anakin on Tatooine, and yet, despite knowing how it would ultimately help to push Anakin to the dark side, Qui-Gon didn't tell anyone, even though he could communicate with the living after learning the secret of how to retain his consciousness after death. This included Anakin's friend and mentor, Obi-Wan, who may have been able to help prevent Anakin's path with the dark side of the Force if he knew what Anakin did. However, the Legends lore reveals that there's a specific reason why Qui-Gon refused to tell Obi-Wan about how Anakin killed the Tusken Raiders after he was overwhelmed by the rage he felt following his mother's death. And in today's video, we'll look at why Qui-Gon made this decision. I will note right at the beginning that there could be a number of potential questions related to why Qui-Gon or any of the Jedi who went on to become Force ghosts wouldn't reveal specific details. For example, Qui-Gon didn't reveal Anakin's actions on Tatooine, but we may also consider why he didn't tell Yoda that Palpatine was the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, or warn him about Order 66, potentially helping prevent the downfall of the Jedi Order. While there are aspects within the lore that might explain larger questions about Force Ghosts revealing information and whether Force Ghosts even knew what would happen in the future, our question here is much more specific, relating only to Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Anakin's attack against the Tusken Raiders. As we'll see, even after Episode 3, once Obi-Wan learned how to communicate with Qui-Gon, Qui-Gon still refused to tell Obi-Wan about what happened with Anakin years earlier, demonstrating that he specifically withheld this information from Obi-Wan. It's this decision, and ultimately the lesson, that we'll look at in today's video. Obi-Wan would learn what happened to Shmi Skywalker in the immediate aftermath of Episode 2, with Yoda having informed Obi-Wan he feared something happened to Anakin's mother, having sensed great pain and anger in Anakin. Ultimately, Obi-Wan would learn of Shmi's death from Padme, and then also confirm it with Anakin, all within the earliest moments after the Battle of Geonosis. However, Obi-Wan would not learn of Anakin's actions against the Tusken Raiders at any point during the Clone War, including from Qui-Gon, who attempted to prevent it in the first place. In fact, even though Obi-Wan had interacted with Qui-Gon only months after he began his mission on Tatooine following Order 66, years would go by with Qui-Gon never once explaining to Obi-Wan what Anakin did, even though it was so important to the path Anakin chose with the dark side of the Force, and that Obi-Wan was on the planet where it took place. Early in Obi-Wan's mission upon Tatooine, while exploring the area surrounding the Lars homestead, the Jedi Master would find the ruins of the camp where Shmi Skywalker had died, and where Anakin took such an enormous step towards the dark side. Of course, Obi-Wan didn't know at this point what Anakin had done there, and yet, although it didn't last long, he was quickly overwhelmed by feelings of loneliness and despair. Obi-Wan would soon move past the ruins after learning that it was a place of great importance to the Tusken Raiders, but it was an important step in Obi-Wan uncovering what Anakin did there roughly 3 years earlier. But a full understanding still wasn't recognized by Obi-Wan for roughly over a year later. 2 years after he arrived on Tatooine, he would once again travel back to the ruins of the camp he visited earlier. Because the ruins had always emanated a terrible, dreadful feeling whenever Obi-Wan traveled near it, he was never motivated to go and inspect it. However, Obi-Wan was particularly drawn to the camp when he felt the usual terrible feeling be much worse, with the Jedi Master concluding the area was calling out to him. Having entered the remnants of the Tusken Raider camp, Obi-Wan immediately noticed what remained of the obvious violence that had occurred there, as well as remains of something that had been used to secure an individual to it. Almost instantly, Obi-Wan recognized exactly where he was, the place where Anakin's mother had died. As described in the Life and Legend of Obi-Wan Kenobi novel, this wasn't something that Obi-Wan merely sensed, but he knew it for a fact. Looking around the ruins of the camp, Obi-Wan also understood the bloodshed that had occurred there, and who caused it: his former friend and apprentice, Anakin. After Obi-Wan came to these conclusions, and now fully understood Anakin's actions there, he heard the voice of Qui-Gon, who told Obi-Wan that now he knew. Obi-Wan was stunned by what he learned, but he immediately questioned Qui-Gon, asking him why he didn't tell him about it. Qui-Gon had a simple reply, expressing that Obi-Wan wasn't ready to know, and in fact, he still wasn't ready. Obi-Wan was initially confused, believing Qui-Gon meant he wasn't ready to understand what happened, then explaining that he already now understood everything that occurred. Anakin's rage caused him to kill the Tusken Raiders out of vengeance, and then he kept it a secret from everyone. Obi-Wan then noted that Qui-Gon had been aware of it, questioning how he could still maintain Anakin was the chosen one when he carried out such an act years earlier on Tatooine. Qui-Gon then importantly pointed out that Anakin didn't keep his actions a secret from everyone, with Obi-Wan knowing almost immediately that Anakin would have told Padme and Palpatine. But then Qui-Gon asked the crucial question to Obi-Wan: why did Anakin keep the secret from him? Obi-Wan's initial thoughts and reply is important, as he initially thought Anakin withheld knowledge of his actions from him because he was afraid that he'd be removed from the Jedi Order, but instead replied to Qui-Gon's question by saying it didn't matter. For Obi-Wan, the only thing that mattered was that Anakin was a Jedi, and he carried out unthinkable bloodshed despite that. However, Qui-Gon was adamant, questioning Obi-Wan's evaluation of Anakin when Obi-Wan himself failed to understand. By this point, Obi-Wan was losing patience, demanding to be told what it was he failed to understand, with Qui-Gon only answering that Obi-Wan still was not ready. The topic ending there for the two Jedi, when Obi-Wan stated he hoped Qui-Gon would tell him when he was ready. Clearly, Qui-Gon had a specific reason why he didn't tell Obi-Wan about Anakin's vengeance against the Tusken Raiders, with the truth not being revealed at any point over the roughly 5 years before Obi-Wan understood exactly what occurred. As seen within the life and legend of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Obi-Wan didn't know what Qui-Gon meant in explaining that he didn't tell him what happened because he wasn't ready. In fact, Qui-Gon would not reveal exactly what he meant or why he withheld what Anakin did from Obi-Wan, but ultimately, over 2 decades later, Obi-Wan would learn and understand the meaning and motivations behind Qui-Gon's actions for himself. Over 20 years after his discovery of what Anakin did to the Tusken Raiders on Tatooine, with Obi-Wan watching, of course as a Force ghost, the confrontation between Luke Skywalker and the Emperor on the second Death Star during the Battle of Endor, the Jedi Master was stunned as he watched Darth Vader's actions when he saved Luke. Obi-Wan had been so certain that Anakin was destroyed by Vader that had he not seen the Sith Lord sacrifice himself to save Luke, he would have never believed it was true. But in having witnessed Vader's actions and the redemption of Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan recognized the terrible mistake he made and exactly where he failed. Obi-Wan believed that Anakin had been completely consumed by the dark side, but also, unlike Luke, refused to believe that there remained any good within Vader. By refusing to allow for the possibility that there was still good within Vader, he didn't just condemn his former friend Anakin, but also his own capacity for hope. At that point, Obi-Wan thought back to his conversation with Qui-Gon over 2 decades earlier, with the Jedi Master's words still remembered by Obi-Wan even after so much time had passed. Although he didn't understand what Qui-Gon meant over the years since they spoke on Tatooine, he now understood why Qui-Gon didn't tell him about what Anakin had done to the Tusken Raiders, and what he meant when he explained that he withheld that information because Obi-Wan wasn't ready. In watching Vader rescue Luke from the Emperor, Obi-Wan now knew Qui-Gon didn't mean he wasn't ready to understand details about how Anakin ultimately came to join the Sith and dark side, but that Obi-Wan wasn't ready to forgive Anakin, something that was crucially important to him. Qui-Gon's lesson was at that point understood by Obi-Wan, and it was this understanding that would result in Obi-Wan admitting to Anakin that he was wrong about him, just before teaching him how to retain his consciousness as a Force ghost, confirming that he was his friend. After more than 20 years, through Anakin's actions during the Battle of Endor, Obi-Wan understood what Qui-Gon meant, and the importance it had for Anakin and for himself. So there we have it, why Qui-Gon didn't tell Obi-Wan about Anakin killing the Tusken Raiders in Episode 2. Thank you very much to all of the Patreon members of Star Wars Reading Club, as your support is so greatly appreciated. You can find all of our social media links and a link to our Star Wars gaming channel in the description below, for updates and even more Star Wars content. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me... For Qui-Gon.